Hey guys, so you know, a day ago, Pro Wrestling Network placed on the Facebook page a quote from an interview that Ricochet did with Chris Van Vliet, I'm assuming this was done during WrestleMania weekend. But the timing of it, couldn't be any better. We know that this week has been mired in controversy as well as earth-shattering news when it comes to WWE and Vince McMahon. We have fans coming out doing the hashtag Fire Vince deal. Some some if not most plan to hijack SmackDown with hashtag Fire Vince tonight. Some know that Endeavor is very much aware of this, so they're trying their best to get their attention to say, hey, get this guy out of here. Don't let this guy near our creative, near our wrestling. You know, they're doing whatever it takes to make their voices heard. But what's interesting is throughout the week, you've had more information come out and sort of the story change a little bit to where it doesn't sound like Vince was that involved. Like he might have been, but not in the ways people felt that he was. And then it might have just been an off night because everybody was tired. They were exhausted and they just wanted to get it done with. You know, but they just blew it out of proportion. And now you have PW Torch coming out and saying, "Yeah, guys, hold up, you could be a little wrong here about Vince being totally involved." And it seems that might be the case because you don't see them talking about it as much as they have. They'll still talk about it because they basically say, "Hey, Vince, get away from our wrestling. We don't want you near our wrestling," and all that. But now, what's interesting, like I said, the timing couldn't be better for this to be dropped because it seems that basically Ricochet's interview, I think, is going to get a lot of people's attention because I read this. I emailed this to just Alex of Alex's World, JD from NY206, Wrestling with Regrets, Brian Zane, and Solomon says Solomon sounds off. And even Sean of Fightful Select, if he hasn't reported on it yet. And when I read this, and hopefully they read it, to me it makes a lot of sense because basically what Ricochet is saying here in this interview that he did with Chris Van Vliet with this quote is, you can interpret wrestling as anything you want it to be. This is what he said, and I quote: "Wrestling can be anything. Wrestling is comedy, wrestling is hardcore, wrestling is strong style, wrestling is high flying, wrestling is a lot of different aspects. And some people, rather than just saying, I don't like the style, they'll just say that's not wrestling. And it's like, well, you're an idiot because wrestling can be literally anything you want it to be." And again, it's right there for you guys to read and see. And when I look at that, I'm like a lot of the people that, read this. I'm like, thank you, Lord, for somebody within the business who has earned the right to say that, who understands the psychology in and out of the business. You know, thank God for someone like that coming out and saying it and pointing that out that, hey, there are certain things about wrestling you may not like, but if you focus on the positives of what you like, even if it's under the same roof of what you don't like, then that shouldn't be a problem. Just focus on that and not the other stuff. But that's not the world we live in, because as I've talked about before, we live in an era that began, believe it or not, almost 20 years ago, where you started seeing companies like Ring of Honor and others, basically, and basically welcome in, if not apply, allow their talent to apply and welcome in those flips and kicks styles that they saw UFC and Bellator and other MMA, combat sports promotions, allowing their men and women to, incorporate into their, fights and, matches and everything. Ring of Honor and all these other companies started to do the same thing. And because of that, fans became accustomed to that as being like, hey, that's our opportunity to finally get pro wrestling looked at as a legit sport. That's our opportunity to finally get pro wrestling to be talked about on sites, well, not on sites, but on channels like ESPN and their Sports Center shows and all that on the same level as UFC. People started to believe and look at it from that perspective and still do, which is why now when they add in the whole Endeavor purchase, 51% that is, of WWE, thus making Ari Emanuel, the guy that runs Endeavor, the boss of Vince McMahon. That's why you're now seeing fans pretty much coming out and trying to get, Ari Emanuel's attention way before it's all officially said and done and the merger is complete, the papers are signed, to get Vince out of there because they don't want him around. They don't trust him. They don't care for him. But yet you have others that are quick to remind them, yeah, you see the bloodline stuff going on right now? You see the stuff with Sami Zayn? You see the stuff with Cody? You see this going on, that going on that you all like? Guess where some of that originally started from? Under Vince. Under Vince. And they'll remind, and when they're quick to remind them of that, those that try to counter argue that and say, "Oh, you're wrong," kind of deal, you can tell that they're trying to, when they finally do give an answer, you can tell that they try to think about, okay, what can I say to justify my, anger. You can tell that they pretty much got pretty much owned in the response by those that are saying, yeah, you're making a bigger deal about nothing because you're asking talent to do mass walkouts, give up their jobs. You're hearing these false rumors of talent, considering, requesting a release. It's like, come on, seriously. It's like, come on, seriously. It's like, what's your brain? What's going on in that brain of yours? Is the argument? Is a questionable argument? It's like, what's going on in that brain of yours? And a lot of the talent's just like, well, not talent, but a lot of the fans are just like, look, that a lot of fans that that are doing this, they're just like, look, because I think this is how they feel deep down, and I could be wrong and all that, but they're just deep down, like, in my opinion, because I understand and respect where they're coming from, but I think deep down, all they basically want, and as I just mentioned, is they just like, in response, if they want to be honest with those that are backlashing at them for, being angry over probably not that much, if not nothing at all, my honest opinion, and I think the answer they want to give without argument is, hey man, we just want wrestling to be treated like a real sport. We just want it to be on the levels of UFC, where ESPN takes time out and says, let's talk about what happened on Raw tonight. Let's talk about what happened on Dynamite tonight. Let's talk about what happened on SmackDown tonight. That's what they want. But they won't come out and say that because they know people will argue them and say, well, there's a difference. UFC and Bellator are legit combat. This is choreographed combat that can be legit at times depending on if the talent is allowed to be so. So that's why you don't hear people just come out straight out and say that, because they know people will counter them with a more logical argument in return. But, again, the timing here couldn't be better for what Ricochet said, because it does encapsulate everything that's going on. Like, hey, if you may not like what Vince is presenting to you, that's fine, but if there's something else under that same umbrella known as WWE that you like, focus on that. Focus on that. I mean, again, you have reports now from PW Torch and others that are saying you probably pretty much blew things out of proportion, and you got false reports. And when I read what Ricochet said there, I look at it like, how multiple people feel about, the new Mario movie. A lot of people, say it's one of the greatest video game adaptations of all time, better than Sonic. Some are saying it's nothing more than woke propaganda garbage that makes Peach the real hero and not Mario. Some are saying that, it's the worst adaptation of all time. And, and guess what? That's fine. If that's how they want to look at it, being, in those ways, they want to interpret it that way, that's fine. Don't get angry over something that pretty much can be interpreted in different ways. And what I get from Ricochet's interview with Chris Van Vliet is exactly that. If you don't want like certain things about wrestling, then don't focus on it. But if it's under the same umbrella and you do see things you like, focus on that. It doesn't have to be one specific thing, because if you think it should be, you make yourself look like an idiot or a dumbass. And I say that with all due respect, but that's pretty much what he said there. But that's just my thought on Ricochet. That's just my thought on it. I just thought I'd bring that up, let you guys talk about it and everything. Give me your thoughts down below. Comment if you like. And until next time, guys, I will talk to you all later.